Well, hello, and welcome to the MilVet Podcast. Your podcast hosts are Brendan Aronson, Tim Shaw, and Beau Higgins. We are military veterans, entrepreneurs, and investors. But most importantly, we strive to empower military service members, veterans, and their families. We believe that all veterans deserve a career that fires them up, a career in which you can learn, you can earn, and you can build a world-class network. On this podcast, we interview civilian and military veteran leaders who are incredible founders, writers, thinkers, and investors. My primary goal is to inspire you to achieve great things. Let's dive into today's episode. Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of the MilVet Podcast. I am your host, Beau Higgins, and I have the pleasure today to be joined by Steve Tazza. Before we get into talking to Steve, for those that may be new to the MilVet or not know what we do, the MilVet is a company that provides an executive pathway for veterans looking to get into the private equity and venture capital backed ecosystem. If you're interested in learning more about what we do at the MilVet, if you're a company that wants to hire veterans in the space or a veteran interested in the space, please check out the MilVet. You can find us on themilvet.org, sign up for our newsletter, and we'd love to talk to you. But we also like to do these podcasts and bring on some guests that have made the transition already and are operating in this space. And Steve is one of those guys, and really pleased to have you on the show today. So Steve, would love to do a quick intro and tell us what you're doing these days.
Bo, thanks for the opportunity. I'm glad we connected, and this is the result of us having a quick chat. Hopefully it'll be helpful. My military service wrapped up a long time ago. So as it relates to transitioning and things of that sort, maybe some good ideas, maybe some dated ideas. So just bear that in mind. But I think the PE specific thing to set the table is I was late into that sector. I got on with an operating company, having not spent time in that ecosystem most of my career, which was spent in investment management, and we can touch on that. But I got on with a software operating company, thanks to the founder, a couple of years ago, and we took it through a full-blown PE process with a consummation in October of 2023. I was acting as the COO at that time through that process. So got to know a great private equity firm who I think very highly of in that, and how the business sort of worked from the inside out, trial by fire. So didn't start early, but finished with a burst of activity with the software company. And I've actually just left very amicably. And we're going to do some stuff with one of the founders of that company on the side related to private investing and things of that sort. So that's where I'm at. And we can get, roll the tape back.
Look forward to understanding the journey. Because I think, every transitioning veteran has a different journey. None of them are linear. They all hit walls, different places, and end up going in a lot of different directions. And again, I love to talk to my guests about what their journey was like. And really, I think it's important to understand before you get to the end, how did it all start? And obviously, you're a Naval Academy grad, but is that something that was the military, something you knew at age 5 you wanted to be? Was it a family thing? Everybody has, or you watch Top Gun? A lot of guys saw Top Gun and wanted to get in. What was your driving factor for joining the military?
Well put. Top Gun was released my plebe year, so that wasn't quite it, but it certainly didn't hurt.
It made it cool though when you were there, so there you go.
Yeah. I was the youngest of 4. Nobody else had the inclination. I would say in my early teens, it started to occur to me. My dad was a World War II Marine, served in the South Pacific, and a lot of the parents in the community had served, Korean War, Vietnam. And so there was this background music, I would say, through my teens. And being a reasonable student athlete, the Naval Academy came onto my radar screen as a sophomore in high school. And cutting to it, there was a couple of role models out in front of me, upperclassmen in my high school that played ball and went on to the Naval Academy to play ball and serve. And so that helps, right? That's a picture that helps fill in the picture. the bottom line answer for me is people's asked me that from the time I was 22 till now, intermittently, is it just seemed like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
All things considered, it just seemed like the right thing to do. Um, and I haven't been able to improve upon that idea. So a little tug here, a little tug there, but I think at bottom, life ends up being about finding yourself in spots with the great privilege of being dependent upon for something important.
Yeah.
And and the Naval Academy suggested to me that the odds were pretty high that people were going to depend on Naval Academy graduates for something important.
It's I think the family piece is obviously a theme that I hear a lot, obviously, in having a father that was military. But the calling piece is definitely, right up there with it. That people at a young age, you do feel called to do something bigger than yourself. You don't know what you're getting into a lot of times, but it's just a feeling of yeah, something intangible that, like, okay, this is I think a place for me that will, and whether you're thinking about it as far as what it will be able to provide for you on the back end. I don't know if a lot of people necessarily do that or not. It certainly has that, forever connecting file. That experience is
Yeah,
something that is such a crucible experience for so many people, whether they serve, 4 years or 40 years. It is something that is a common bond that's still there today, and that calling is still there and real, and it's noble. I mean, I could not have done it personally, but I totally respect the folks that did do it. So
yeah,
yeah, it's great.
yeah. Well, couple quick rejoinders there is, the idea of not being allowed out on a Friday or Saturday night was not a foreign concept to me. So that was not a big issue in terms of adjusting. Look, you don't want to romanticize the thing, particularly young people, overly romanticize it. But when somebody comes at you and says, "We want to build you mentally, morally, and physically," it, that's going to take hold in people a different way, and that had its appeals sort of quietly, as you say. So anyway, that was the rub. They wanted me to come play ball, which was a nice bonus. I'd have gone if they didn't want me to play ball. So that was part of the deal, and I'm glad I went there. And uh, Annapolis is a good place to visit was one of the slogans, right? Um, and it wasn't a barrel of laughs, but I'm glad it'll be on my headstone.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. It's a great way to put it. I'd love to hear you. So, what was, as you were finishing up your time at the academy, did you have a feel, or when you joined, that you wanted to be a pilot or infantry, or how the SWO? I mean, how that process worked for you? And then I'd
Yeah,
love to kind of hear about your time in the fleet and actually how that went for you.
yeah. Well, but at the time in the fleet was easy and anticlimactic. So let me get that out of the way, and we'll come back to it. But I thought I'd be a Marine when I went there. Um, I don't want to dwell on it, but I ended up with a shoulder that was really bad
Oh,
from playing football.
yeah.
Um, and it wasn't right. Anyway, set those things aside. It ebbed and flowed, right? The great thing about the place, one of the great things, many great things about it, is they let you see everything, right? Get on a sub, you're on big ship, little ship during the summer, you're in Pensacola, and so if you think you have an inclination, they give you a chance to find out about that inclination. So between the shoulder and some other stuff, I ended up in the business side of the Navy, which ended up feeding my sort of interest in business generally, right? I was a suppo on an aircraft carrier, Constellation, never in harm's way, easy duty. But, I scratched down some notes and just free-forming it with you. The thing about the military is academy and military in general, it's a great privilege. And it doesn't feel that way at times, but it's a great privilege to be put around people that are better at stuff than you are, right? They're just flat better. They're bigger, stronger, smarter. And I think it's one of the great privileges. So, you get knocked down, uh, and you have to rise up with people that are better than you. So when I think about the academy and I think about service in the military, it's got pros and cons, but the thing that lasts is you meet people that can make you better. and they can make you better professionally, mentally, and then, great character. And then you meet some people that, like you would in all walks of life, that show you how not to do it.
Yeah.
Right. There is no panacea and there is no utopia. So anyway, some thoughts. The service was uneventful. I was on that carrier, ran a couple of supply divisions, and I developed an interest in financial markets during that time. I probably should have been reading other things, but I started to read some of the classics, Market Wizards and One Up on Wall Street and Liar's Poker and Reminiscences of a Stock Operator. So I was endlessly curious about the thing, and about that business or about that sector. And so that just sort of caught hold when I got out, and I'll pause there, but that was just sort of a progression that happened. But the people that can make you better, whether it's in the military or out, but I think the military does a great job at teeing that up. That's the rich part of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that is the common theme too, is that, the experience and the people you meet, the camaraderie, the teamwork. I mean, you can't capture that anywhere else in the world. I mean, maybe on a pro football team, but very few places do you have those shared experiences, those shared life experiences where people of all shapes, sizes, cultures are all kind of thrown together, and you're all equal in the same uniform, right? I mean, it's just you get along and you learn to get along. But I also love your point of, in that journey, you learn a few things. One, I mean, there's some part of the grit you need and the adaptability, right? You thought you were going to be a Marine, medical reasons that you pivoted, but obviously successfully. But, one door closes, another path opens, right? That you maybe didn't think you would go on, but it obviously is part of the journey in the beginning for you. And the other thing you hit on, which I think is spot on, is, we learn from leaders, good and bad. And I would tell you, you almost can learn more from bad leaders a lot of times than good leaders. You say, I'm never doing that again. If I'm in charge, I know I'm not doing that way, So I think that's one important thing to take away is that, not every person you meet is someone that you will look up to, but you can learn from everyone, whether it's a good, you can learn, there's positives in every experience. I used to like to say you grow where you planted, right? Maybe put the place you didn't think you would be in a role you weren't maybe excited about, but you can always learn from it and benefit from it and take the positives from it for that next step in the journey, right?
Yeah, and the point you touched on something. One of the great things about my service, not my service, but serving, was that the Navy looked like the world in terms of its demographic, where people came from, all walks of life. And if you haven't seen that growing up, and some do, and some, it's a matter of degree, I'm thankful that to be able to relate to be asked to relate to empathize with, to listen, lead, follow, and even love people of all walks of life. That is a good eternal capacity, or a good eternal aperture to look at the world through. If you join right out of school into a XYZ investment bank or what have you. So I was super thankful for that part of it, among others.
Yeah, no, you're spot on with that too. I think just having that world view at a younger age is super important. I mean, I know. I mean, I grew up in New Orleans. A lot of people there never left. They're still there. I mean, they're still home and have maybe left to go to Texas or Florida. But it's just to be able to have that exposure at a young age of different cultures, different people. You can't put a price tag on that. I think it is invaluable, that service, and just understanding the backgrounds that people have and the reasons they join, and just kind of where they're from, and hopefully picking up the good from all of that, because there is a lot of good out there, and taking that with you as you move forward to whatever next phase of life there is, for sure. That's great stuff. Great stuff. Well, what was I mean, obviously you say non-eventful time, but you served, you went deployed, you did your thing. Doesn't matter if, the war wasn't going on then. You couldn't, you don't pick the time you serve, you just served, right? But what was, did you know kind of going in, you only wanted to do 4 years, or just kind of your time, or what was kind of the decision point to to get out of the Navy after your time in?
Well, it seemed to me reasonably early on that I would do my best and do well and make a contribution and probably end up leaving after my time was up. But it wasn't crystal clear. I'm not a person. I meet people and I'm envious of them, although I'm skeptical as well when they say, "Well, I just knew. I just knew it was this, or I knew it was that, or I knew the minute I met so and so that he or she was the one for me." And I'm like, I wish, in a way. So the soft movie was, I thought it would be that way, and it just sort of kept taking shape. It wasn't, running out bitter or anything of that
Yeah.
sort. It was a good experience. Um, but I got that bug about financial markets, and I started to do some work, which was harder to do, actually easier in a way, without internet connectivity, which is funny. I say when I went to the Naval Academy, we didn't have the internet. People think that means that we didn't have internet access. There was no internet.
Right. It didn't exist. Yeah, right. I understand. Yeah.
No, I didn't lack access. There
Yeah.
was nothing to
Yeah.
access. So I was getting smart where I could about that industry. And then, of course, as always, as I was transitioning, you meet people that want to mentor you and help you, educate you about how things in the private sector are laid out. And I just kept sort of building an awareness of what firms did what was interesting. And it became clear to me, just again, free forming it with you, that with my background at that time, with where I wanted to end up, which was a bulge bracket investment bank, right? That was the scope, with a big brand name where I could be around the investing of money. Okay. So inside there is corporate finance and investment banking pure. There's capital markets, sales and trading. Then there's wealth management arms and things of that sort. So I was gathering perspective about all of that. The punchline is I needed to go to a good MBA program to do the doing. And so I did that. I got into North Carolina, thankfully, and became an intern at Goldman Sachs for the summer, and started my career there.
How did you, I mean, you obviously were networking already then, I assume, talking to people that had gotten out that were in those different markets or industries. I mean, obviously, again, no LinkedIn back in the day. But
No.
what was your approach to kind of networking? So I talk about that all the time on the podcast, the importance of networking, right? Your net worth is correlated to your network, and finding
Yeah.
those people and making the effort, probably harder in some ways back in the day when you didn't have the internet, but you did it. I mean, I'm curious what your approach was and kind of how you check some of those boxes off.
Yeah. I think it was easier because it wasn't nearly as cluttered.
Hmm.
The channels were not nearly as cluttered, and I wouldn't know much today. And I say that with shame, not in any way proud or I've graduated and who needs not at all. I have not done a good job in middle age um, of staying current with the people that I should, from a practical, transactional, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It can be, but back then you sat down and you wrote a letter and you picked a phone up,
Hmm.
or even more so, what you cannot do today, or seems to me you cannot do, you'd show up. You just show up. You'd 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 write a few letters, and then you'd knock on somebody's door. Um, a big firm in New York that I didn't work at didn't recruit at North Carolina. It wasn't one of their core schools. But I wanted to make sure I got an internship at one of a handful of firms. So while that was still up in the air, I pounded on this guy in New York, the head of institutional sales at a top 3 firm in the United States. I found his name and I called and left him a voicemail, and he said, "You come in during Christmas break." And I went in and we had 40 minutes of back and forth, and he was impressed, mostly by the can do, show up.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how to do that in today's environment. An email with an attachment doesn't move the needle because of traffic. So I don't have anything wisdom for today's environment, but back then it was not frowned upon at all to just sort of politely show up. People liked it.
I love that. That's great. I never really thought about it, but you're right. It must have been in some ways easier because there were probably less noise, less clutter. You don't get 1,000 emails a day, 1,000 texts a day, 1,000 LinkedIn requests a day. It's like, okay, who's this crazy guy that's calling me up?
Well,
I gotta meet this guy. He's got to be.
there's that, and then you had to haul your derriere onto a train,
Yeah,
or get in a car and drive a couple of hours
yeah.
to get the thing going. Versus today, again, that cluttered pipe. To me, it seems so. I think it was easier in a way there. I mean, sitting down at a typewriter or on, a 33 megahertz computer to generate a
Yeah.
letter was no fun. But, and you postmarked it and you sent it. Even when I was at Goldman Sachs, we did a lot of handwritten stuff. Everyone did it their own way. Now email's all up and running and people are sending stuff by then. But I took great care, and I think it worked. I would write people handwritten notes. I'd grab a thing, and so I still think the handwritten note is not extinct, but the fact that it's almost extinct makes it stand out. I think it's counterintuitive.
No, I agree 100%. My mom taught me well to write thank you notes, and I still write a lot of letters every year. I go to retreat and try to write a lot of handwritten letters. It matters. It's different. It is definitely, that is the anomaly these days, right? So
That's right.
That probably helps you that's a good point. Probably makes you stand out more than anybody else.
It does.
That's funny.
It does. There's no doubt about it. No one gets mail, opens it and says, with something that says, I was giving some thought to something.
Yeah.
Our conversation or your business or my future. No one gets that opener in a handwritten note. It will get people's attention. I don't want to get correspondence that says, I did that 50 times and nobody, but nonetheless, that's,
I'm a believer.
I miss it.
So I love it.
I miss it.
And how did being a veteran, I assume it did, obviously that to somewhat of a unique background in the Wall Street financial markets. There's obviously there are veterans up there, don't get me wrong, but it's still a bit of a rarity or anomaly. Did that something that you were able to utilize? Again, I know places like Goldman now have veteran programs. They have a dedicated. Right. Was that something that existed when you came through? Were you able to get into that? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think people, and it wasn't that they were hiding it. It wasn't as regimented or socialized.
Yeah.
How would you even socialize it, right? Like back in the day. But there were programs, and there was a general respect. I'll make a point here, or try to, that the vocabulary is critical, right? Now, the younger you are, and if you've been in industry, it sort of goes without saying that the vocabulary of an industry is going to assuage whatever image people have of a veteran in their mind. Now, if it's a young, shiny veteran, meaning they haven't done anything else, the vocabulary hurdle is higher. But that reading that I was doing in those books, when I sat with that guy in New York, he said, I love that you did this and that and the other thing, but what do you really know about financial markets? I get it. You're curious. And I said, well, do you want to talk about Federal Reserve policy? Now I'm a freshman. And he said, sure, go ahead. And for 120 seconds, I held court on the last three meetings. Would they move interest rates? What Greenspan? That's how long ago that said. And he sort of sat up in his chair, Beau, at the end of it. So I was speaking a basic form, but not a casual form of his vocabulary.
Yeah. That's
great. And he appreciated that. So if you're transitioning or if you're trying to get your next gig, it's the industry vocabulary that sort of dulls down the edges between this is somebody I may have a hard time. I respect them, but I may have a hard time relating to them or them to me. I think that is a mental model that people put in their heads. One more short story. We had a business where we were trying to stand up running trucks through communities collecting junk, basically. It was like 1-800-GOT-JUNK under the J-Dog brand. Separate story, but we were hiring a lot of post 9/11 vets, right? Doing shift work or running crews. And a kid came into my office one day. We call it an office. It was like a closet. This was one of the startups. And he said, I want to do some hours, but I'm going to go get my military, police, civilian thing. And I said, great. Let's work that out. Tell me, why do you want to stay in security? He was probably 24. And he said, that's all I know. It's all I can do. And I said, listen, sit down. I said, don't ever say that again, that's all you can do. Don't. Here's why. And for 3 minutes, I explained to him, having read his Indeed biography, all the things he could do.
Yep.
And it was just vocabulary and concepts that were different. That's all. I said, don't ever say that again. So, piece of advice, if people would indulge me, is don't create stories that don't exist.
Yeah.
Don't create stories that you think are in people's minds. They don't exist. You're going to create the story with them in a conversation or in a set of interactions. Don't suppose you understand what they think about your service. Don't suppose anything.
It's interesting because I talk to a lot of junior enlisted guys, and you talk to a bosun's mate or a machinist mate or an infantryman or artilleryman. They have that attitude like, well, my skills don't translate. Like, dude, your skills 100% translate. You have done way more than your peers of your age in many cases. I think there's this imposter syndrome. Oh, military, I can't do that. But you have to get beyond that, right? You become your own worst enemy and telling yourself no. And people would love to talk to you, but learn the language to talk in, and then they would love to talk to you, no doubt about it.
Well, and one of the great blessings of this era with the pros and cons of technology, let's say you want to break into XYZ, or you're going to talk to somebody that works in the wastewater management, or they're a software company. Like, you can get smart. Don't wait till the night before.
Right.
But you can get smart enough where it doesn't feel fabricated, doesn't feel forced, but that your language and your curiosity will surprise them, because they don't have high expectations if they're reasonable, and you could probably exceed them with ease. All they need is a new MOS.
Yeah, right.
It's not, the underlying skills are either there or they're not.
Yeah.
And the military is no guarantee that they are, but they are transferable. And that guy in New York, when he said, what do you really know about capital markets? I had my answer.
Yeah.
Or I presented him with evidence of it. That chops a lot of wood.
Love that. That's great advice, I think, 100%. Well, so you spent a good chunk of time, and I think there's always a process. Now, so I talked to a lot of folks that have had similar journeys to yours. Obviously you're getting to the game a little late, right? You had your time in the Navy and then your MBA time. Other kids, are 24 years old that have those entry level roles at a Goldman, and there is some catch up time, right? To like, not that you don't have the capacity, but there's just a little bit of a catch up you have to make. Did you notice that, or feel like I kind of have to work twice as hard early just to get up to my peers' level because they've been doing this for a few years already?
Well, yeah, and again, things were simpler then.
Yeah.
But I'd say this, that it depends on the role, right? I'll make I don't know how much it's changed. Probably not that much that the point would be irrelevant. I think it's still relevant. If you want to work in investment banking, yeah, you're going to probably have to make up some time because, pure investment banking, corporate finance and M&A. But if you want to work in the relationship side of a business, servicing customers, it's a couple of years on the calendar, but I do not think that it's lost time that is at all insurmountable. The only track I can think where it's difficult and doesn't make a ton of sense is when they come out of undergrad and they go into those really rigorous investment banking analyst programs while people are out serving in the Navy. And to do that at 25 or 6, people do it.
Yeah.
But that's a little disconnected. But otherwise, I think it's just part of building a story that doesn't need to be built, if I'm being honest.
Roger that. No, that's great. Great insights. So you finished up your time. Well, just talk to kind of your. I mean, from there, you kind of had the big Wall Street experience.
Yeah.
Went well, I assume. Sounds like it did well. But what was next, and how did it go from there?
Yeah. So my career, my progression is one I wouldn't recommend. Here's the quick summary of it. Is I started Goldman. Everything's good. I had a good experience at Goldman Sachs. It was a private partnership. It went public when I was there. There was an intimacy in terms of how it operated. I had a very good experience there. I really did. I left voluntarily to start a hedge fund. I got a billionaire to give me some money. So when I say my entrepreneurial stuff started, stopped, started again, and being dead serious, I made some mistakes later, which is not easier to do. When I say mistakes, ventures that didn't work. So Goldman, I started a hedge fund with a billionaire's backing. I did okay. It didn't graduate, but there was no big tail on the thing. Then I went back and worked at Lehman during the financial crisis. Then I worked at a family office. Then we do the startup with the post 9/11 vets, right, which was an operational business. So all the while the income level is doing this. So that's not that I'm doing that. That's not the direction that you want it to go. Right. But I'll tell you what you learn, which again is not easy. School of hard knocks a little bit. I've had an easy life. Let's not lose sight of that. But is being at a startup, being on an aircraft carrier, being at Goldman, having a mission orientation with the post 9/11 vets versus a pure profit orientation, like some other things I've done. Those all take different skills, aptitudes. They're going to call from you different things. Some of them you like having called from you, some of them you don't. So I have seen, versatile would be a kind way of putting it, is the versatility of setting. And then this founder, as I said, he said, I know all the things you've done, and I know some of them have worked and some of them haven't. But that's all value to me. This is the owner talking. I need you in here to think, communicate, problem solve, and lead. Right now we're back to these generic skills. Yep. This is a founder of a software company who never served anything close in the military, but he assigned the value, knew me a little bit throughout the years. But it could have been somebody else just like me if they had known him. So people care about those things. The other thing I would say about getting into the business now, whether you're, and we'll try and stay focused on PE, is that the era of the generalist, bad news for me, generalist is over. You have to be a subject matter expert on very specific lanes. And you can have multiple lanes that you've accumulated or you're starting to accumulate, but people don't hire, it doesn't seem to me, great athletes. I think there's some of that, but if you want to excel in private equity, you are going to be known as a known quantity for a specific set of things with a repetition or two attached to it. Full stop. You have been the chief revenue officer. You have a go-to-market strategy, a digital marketing strategy, very specific specs, right? And so my advice to people that want to get into PE, and there's 3 ways to do it, is not only the vocabulary, but start early and stay with it. Stay with it. And if you find somebody that can teach you, whether that's partly the firm, but who you work for is going to make the biggest difference in the world. If you're young or on the younger side and you find the right person to work for, don't mess with it. Stay with it. When somebody wants to hire you away, you got to price the intangibles of where you are in there. And when somebody looks at you and says, I know they've done this, this, and this, and it's specific, like project management skills. Okay, tell me about the waterfall or the agile, the methodology, the parent child, what systems did you use? This is not like, hey, I love that man or that woman. They just had a good air about them. Things don't get done that way
Yeah.
anymore. So that's some thoughts about how to get in. Let me pause, and then I'll say there's three ways. When I think of private businesses, there's three ways. I got three things in my head I could share, but I'll pause and let you redirect.
No. I think this is a good follow on of how to do that kind of thing. I think you're setting a good table for, at least in your opinion, what with for those guys that want to get into space. I mean, how do you do it? That's really what this is all about. Is how do you do it? Because it's not. It can be a little. I don't know. I think it's a somewhat incestuous business sometimes. It's kind of small, and you kind of have to know someone. That seems to be the way that
Yes.
I have seen it. But I'd love to hear your take on what else, other ways to do it, how to crack that nut. That's the hard part is just the starting point. I think a lot of times, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple of thoughts. There are teams of people who are known specifically in PE, and I sort of struck a, a, a mark in that column by being the COO of something that got consummated. But really, they have multiple reps. They've been specializing in turnarounds or growth, and that bench, that bullpen, you got to get in. You're either in that bullpen or you're not. Now, it's never too late, so to speak, to get into it, but the earlier you can be identified as having been through a transaction or delivered value, improved EBITDA, done something in a channel, something tangible that a business owner, privately, closely held, or a sponsor would value, that's that vocabulary with live repetition. So being a subject matter expert, I know go-to-market strategies, I know project management, I know software development, and then having the waterfall that attends to that, that's going to be critical because once you're inside that ecosystem, you'll get called on over and over again, right? Even if it's so three versions of it. One is to start and own and operate something yourself. I've tried that with others. Okay. I don't want to spend too much time on it. All I would say is day zero, get the legal, ownership, and finance, the reps and warranties all understood. I don't want to be cynical, but you know, me and so, we go way back. We're 50-50 in this thing. Many of those things end in a graveyard. Okay. Get it all taken care of day one. There's nothing wrong with being an employee, and there's nothing wrong clearly with being an owner. Don't confuse the two things. And don't let somebody else slow roll you to confusing your ownership, right? Or your future ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Too many of those end in tears. So if you can control something and own and operate it, and you can do it without depending on the kindness of strangers, a lot of debt, it's a rare needle to thread, do it. Okay. Go ahead and do it. But do not get vagaries involved with who owns what and what happens if more capital is needed, et cetera, et cetera. So you got to consult people along the way that have done it, have succeeded, not succeeded, if you're going to take that route. Where you're focused is how do you get into either what's valued as an operator, a finance person, a marketing person, either in the PE ecosystem or in a closely held business, right? And that's, I've overtalked it. That's about bringing functional expertise day one, credibility to a role, right? Everything now is mapped like a machine, right? And there's different parts of the machine that are interacting all the time. Identify where you can add that value, go develop that skill set, and then it'll just be on offer internally or otherwise the entire time. If you want to work for a sponsor, which is a third way to do it, that's going to be largely a financial, in my opinion, in my experience, limited as it might be, that's going to be largely financial modeling. Most people that grow up working at PE firms worked in investment banking, in corporate finance, because they can write VLOOKUPs in Excel. They can write financial models that make your head spin, amortization schedules, cash versus accrual. When we went through due diligence, we had 1,500 questions from all these reputable firms on the other side of us. We were nearly overwhelmed. I think I joked with you about it. So super financial attention to detail. That's got to be your thing if you want to work at a PE firm.
Yeah.
Now, inside PE firms, they have operating talent that some of them will deploy into portfolio companies. But if I was thinking myself with everything I know and don't know, what I've learned hard or easy, I would get in the operational side of an operating business and carve out an industry, a set of industry expertise that how, if you're dealing in wastewater, and I don't know anybody that is, I'm just using it as an example, the EPA and zoning and municipalities and funding and grants and it's thick. Everything is thick. So lean in. And all the while, I'm droning on, but all the while, these existential questions as you go along, they might have come from me a little later. Like, what is all of this, right? What is all of this adding up to? Am I working? If I wasn't doing this here with this company tomorrow, and they weren't doing it, who would miss it and why?
Mm.
And that's a different podcast.
Yeah.
but I think it plays into it.
Yeah.
So great mentors, great teachers, subject matter expertise in an operating role. And I think the canvas is very broad and wide over time there.
And I think that's what, typically, at least from the MilVet side of the house, the folks that we're placing are going into those private equity backed portfolio companies, right?
Yep.
So it is the HVAC, the waste management, the electrical, or defense. We do a lot of defense tech too. But you're right. You have to be able to read a P&L. That's a lot of folks leaving the military don't have that yet. So you have to have those tangible skills, right? In most times, a specific injury, aerospace, whatever it is. I mean, you have to have a line, that you are the expert in, right? And then I think if you have that and you can layer on top of it, obviously, the military piece, that is something that can set you apart. Now you have to work to get those other pieces.
No doubt about it.
But if you have the ability to, lead up and talk to a board and lead down and talk to the hourly employees, that's something a lot of folks that just went and got their MBA don't have. Right? So I think there is a value add the military can layer on top, but you do have to learn those hard skills or become an expert in a lane, right? That's the trifecta, doing all those things, right? So yeah.
Yeah. So the 10-second version of my blather is this: that the specific subject matter will get you in the door. Everything else that you are capable of because of the things you just said will get you up the elevator, but it will not get you in the door. So get in the door, get yourself potted with subject matter expertise and the ability to execute. And everything is so tech driven today. Every business has so much of a technology component to it that if you can move needles in there and think critically, look, at the end of the day, the best chance of winning is the person that can compile, analyze, distill, and explain back, and then operate a very diffuse set of information inputs. That's it. Military people, as a general rule, are well wired to that capability. You just have to fill the subject matter in. But the thing I think that'll get you in the door or will get you, your gear really taken off is having a great command of something specific.
I love that analogy. Once the hard part is getting in the door, your soft skills will help you go up the elevator quickly. I really like that concept. But it's on you to learn the actual hard skills to get in the door. And I think what you describe is what I would call, the OODA loop, right? In the military, it's observe, orient, decide, act. If you can do that faster than your enemy or than the competition, whatever it may be in the civilian sector, that's what we're built that way in the military once you have the opportunity, right? But you have to get in the door first, and then you can apply those skills to be able to take in this data, assess it, analyze it, and do it hopefully faster than anybody else out there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that comes to mind, you're really helping with the mental prompts, despite how it shows up from my end, but is specialization, right? Over time, more and more specialization, more and more specialization. I'm not a sociologist, but is depersonalized, right? Specific people doing very specific tasks, right? Is there's an impersonal kind of feel to that. Okay, so hold that thought. I've worked in places, and I'm not going to name them, where there is palpable disdain for the customer. Somebody hangs up a support call or an inbound, and they're, what a terrific pain in the neck that person is. Okay, here's the thing. You can reverse engineer it. Like Ben Hogan, I used to play some golf, so I've read some books, whatever. Hogan and Nicklaus used to walk the courses backwards at the majors during the week before the ball went on the peg on Thursday. They would walk from the greens to the tees because it would show them things that they couldn't see when they did it the other way around. So I think one way to really be effective and then create value is to go all the way into the customer's house, whatever business it is. Go all the way into their house. Don't sit in your house and look out your window into their house and think you see what they see.
Yeah.
Go all the way in. So few people are willing to do it that I think you can move major initiatives. You can move major content. You can deliver huge value. You may be so good at that the people around you find it objectionable. I'm telling you, I've seen it happen. That when you empathize with the customer, which is absolutely the right thing to do, and solve their problems first, when you view that as your role without having it written down that way, the value you can deliver is immense. You will build great will, and you will build jealousy and envy. And so when in doubt, understand the PE firm's customer and the platform company's customer, and the rest will take care of itself.
I try to relate that to just my military experience. And, we used to call it leadership by walking around, right? You need to get out there into supply and into the armory and into the engine room, right? And talk to the guys and understand what they're doing. Because if you want to take care of your Marines and sailors, you have to know them and understand what they're doing before you can do something to help them. If you're sitting back and trying to do it maybe by the book and think you know it, I mean, there's something about having the ground truth, right? And talking to the people that are the ones that are your customers. And I think you can lose sight of that. I think 100%. I think that's something that hopefully as military leaders, we would bring to the table, which is, I don't know if unique, but is something that we do bring to the table for sure.
Yeah. And I think, not to continue sermonizing, but personhood is a thing that's being obviated by the way society is functioning. And I don't mean by somebody else's choices being different than yours, just the mechanical way we go about our lives every day. So walking around, management by walking around, getting out in your spaces, it was getting at personhood, that persons are still going to be the thing.
Yep.
We can try and outsource personhood all we want. All it's going to do is make us miserable, if not worse, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. So perfect trust, ready? Here's the big line from me. Perfect trust between perfect persons is the final and total expression of humanity. Perfect trust between perfect persons is the final and total expression of humanity. Now, in small ways, you can't even begin to tickle that idea if you're not physically sitting in front of somebody asking them, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Tell me about your contract dispute. I've done this. So we've all done this 100 times. Somebody read their contract a certain way. They thought they were being charged a certain way. Guy tells me, hey, I got a lawyer to look at this and that. I said, Matt, I've known you a while now. I've been here a couple of years, this, that, the other. He said, I'm coming over. I said, Thursday, I'll be there at 1:00. Let's just talk this through. Personhood, right? It's not premeditated.
Yeah.
I just knew what was going to happen. It wasn't going to work. Emails, text messages, fine. Nothing substantive was ever done. A lot of harm, but nothing substantive was ever done that way,
Yeah.
ever, and never will be. So what we're talking about, walking around, figuratively, literally, yes, I think it's a big deal. And once you're in and you lead and you follow that way, people will take note because nobody else is doing it.
Yeah. I love that. No, that's what sets you apart, right? That is the added, extra mojo of that veteran piece that you should have learned as a young officer, young staff NCO, to be out there and learn your people. And that's what it all comes down to. I mean, that's a translatable skill that maybe people don't think about as much in this space, but it applies everywhere. It's a universal skill that is needed to be successful once you get in the door, which can be the hard part in a lot of these places.
Yeah, I think it's as much a trait as it is a skill.
Yeah, good point.
Right? I think it's sort of an innate something that was fostered and nurtured,
Yeah.
but it's more like a trait than a skill.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that life is much worth living without trying to get to perfect trust between perfect persons.
I love that. Well, I know we're getting kind of close to the end here. I mean, any things that if you look back over your time, in the space and in your journey, are there things you would say, like lessons learned, like, man, I wish I would have known that ahead of time, or things you would have done differently if you had to do it all over again? Again, I know you learn from everything, good and bad, but what were some of the things like? Okay, here's a few things that I wish I would have done a little bit differently to make my journey a little easier. Although it worked out well, don't be wrong. But
yeah, well, of course, I would have read more books. Now that's a bit obtuse, but I would have read more books about a range of things and less of the Wall Street Journal or watching Bloomberg or CNBC. Not that I would cut that all the way out, but I developed this habit because of a disappointment, maybe along the way, or two, is you got to stress test things. Now, I get it. A lot of billion, trillion, whatever dollar, cocktail napkin and go. So I don't want to bridle people's ambition or their enthusiasm. Far be it. But you should be asking what can go wrong with twice the intensity of what can go right. And if you're going to take a risk or you're going to make a change, it's a matter of degree, right? There's a volume knob on those ideas, but they're all there. Just ask yourself rationally and get some others that you trust, perfect trust between perfect persons or something like that, and get their perspective on it. And people say, well, what are you being cynical? What do you mean what can go wrong? If they object and move on, because there's been a lot of, I think you can avoid a lot of angst just by putting yourself through that exercise. And when something's not going well, there's two reasons it can't. One is it's not financially sustainable, or it's got structural problems, like objective, non-personnel, it's not that. It's just literally not working, right? Change it or get out of it. And if you've tried to change it once, twice maybe, drop it. Cut your losses and go, right? So to speak. Now, don't leave people high and dry. All that goes without saying. So I think moving on and being a risk manager of your own career, no one else is going to own that for you. No one else is going to own that for you. And make your mistakes early if you can. I mean, look, I read the same. The problem with the world problem, I think it's a little misleading, is, yeah, Colonel Sanders started KFC when he was 62, and Roy Kroc and McDonald's. Okay. Do you know how many 60-somethings never saw the light of day trying something when they were 60, right? It's millions to one.
Yeah.
So I love the American spirit and the entrepreneurial spirit, but take a moment and don't depend on the kindness of strangers. Don't borrow money if you can avoid it. Do not borrow money if you can avoid it, and don't give up control if you can avoid it. The best time to give up control is down the road, not early on. And I would be cautious about splitting into thirds or 50-50 if somebody's going to do a purely entrepreneurial thing. But the best advice I have is find a good mentor, someone that can make you smarter at what you're doing every day and make you a better person. Hold on to that. If you find that rare combination in a person or several people, man, don't mess with it. Let it run its course, because you'll spend most of your life possibly looking for it if you don't stay with it, looking back, trying to get it back.
That is some great advice, and I don't know any more that we can cover on that topic. I really appreciate the time, Steve. It was lovely just to hear about your journey and your experiences, and some of the things you shared. I thought were super insightful, and I really just love how the military piece layers on top of so much of the industry piece, and how those can fuse together. I mean, again, there's no guarantees, but there is obviously opportunities out there for our veterans that are listening. And I think your journey is one they can all learn from. So thank you for the time today. I appreciate it. And look forward to seeing you in the future sometime soon.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk with you, and I hope one or two things are useful to your listeners over time, and I wish them all Godspeed.
Hoorah, out here.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. For more content, follow us on Instagram @TheMilitaryVet or on LinkedIn. Join us at an upcoming event or learn more on our website, TheMillVet.org. Feel free to email us directly at leadership@TheMillVet.org. Thank you so much and take care.